Woo wows at Weaselmoot. Varianters vie in Vermont. And Lester lends his lessons. I'm David Hood, and this is Deadline, DBN's monthly news program. Dateline, October 2025. For our feature story, one of the most important things that a tournament director does is to select a scoring system for use in determining awards and overall standings. But this assignment can also be quite tricky. Debates have raged on for decades over the proper way to score a player's games to determine the winner, while at the same time encouraging optimal or desirable play from that player. So into this conflagration of controversy stepped our special correspondent, Hal Schild, who interviewed interested hobbyists on this subject of scoring systems. You'll see that discussion later in this program. But first, a look at headlines from around the world of diplomacy. The 2025 North American Championship, Dipcon, was played the first weekend in October in conjunction with the Weaselmoot tournament in Chicago. Andrew Wu took home the gold on the strength of a monster final board, just edging out second place finisher and fellow Diplo rat Johnny Gillam by 1 center, with Katie Gray coming in third. Brian Pravel, Sabia Huja, and the rest of the Windy City Weasels put on a spectacular event this year, which should really set the stage for a quite successful return of World Dipcon to Chicago in 2027. Speaking of future events, at this year's Dipcon Society meeting, the 2026 site for Dipcon was decided. Congratulations to the Armada group in Colorado, as their Regatta tournament will once again host the North American Dipcon for the first time in 25 years. Before we leave the subject of this year's Dipcon, though, let me report on another winning performance. Missouri's Cameron Higbe was awarded the Golden Microphone Award for their best karaoke outing. Hal Schild, roll the video. Dipcon was not the only face-to-face event we've seen since the last episode of Deadline. A few weeks ago, the UK Championship was played under the capable leadership of TD Bradley Grace. Dan Lester achieved the very difficult repeat as champion, with him having also won last year's tournament in Warrington as well. Coming in second and third were Conrad Woodring and Gunther Bedson, respectively. Later in this program, we'll hear from Dan about both his championship win and his views on tournament diplomacy in general. Moving to continental Europe now, the second annual Hechtstechen Dip event was held in Dresden, with DBN personality Robert Schuppe in charge. Dutch phenom Maaike Blom was awarded first prize in this event, with German players Simon Wiesendrup and Inge Frank taking the silver and the bronze. Full coverage of both of these events is available right here on DBN. Just check out our YouTube channel to find those and other recent videos, including this late-breaking news. Flying Fox Fandango video covering that Melbourne event was just released. The Fandango was won by Marcus Loane, with Brandon Austin and Robert Hillier coming in second and third. Speaking of DBN, our website has a schedule page where you can check out the details of upcoming diplomacy tournaments and league play worldwide. So use the links provided to find that information. Some of the future events that you will discover on that page include the European Diplomacy Championship in Leiden, November 7th through 9th, the Australian Open, November 21st through 23rd, and the Paris Open, December 5th through 7th. By the time you see this broadcast, it will be too late to have attended the Carnage event in the U.S. and Vermont, but we'll report the results next time on Deadline. The latest edition of our hobby's flagship publication, Diplomacy World, has been released by managing lead editor Doug Kent. Issue 171, the fall 2025 release, features a series of strong articles as well as the usual upcoming event promotions and letter call. Of note, on the articles front is a great piece by longtime hobbyist David E. Cohen, describing his first face-to-face game of diplomacy in, count it, 42 years, in which he played Austria with his fellow Diplo-rats in New York City. There are also 2 strong pieces from Malarkey, including one about historical material from old Diplomacy World issues from decades ago, plus a dip-themed crossword from Archie Duke, a dip-themed humor piece authored under the name S.A. Tyre, a report from the Asia-Pacific Championship by Shane Armstrong, and a whole lot more. Check out this latest publication using the link provided, and be thinking now about what you could submit for issue 172. Articles are due by the end of December. A new diplomacy-themed game is set for release by license holder Renegade Games in May 2026, a card game called The Golden Blade. Each of up to 7 players, mainly, they interact with the players seated to the left and the right, using simultaneously placed order cards to try to increase their own power scores and decrease neighbor scores, using 3 different domains of conflict: armies, fleets, and the political era. Secret or public negotiations are still part of this new game, but limited to 5 minutes per turn. Card titles include such familiar terms to us as sabotage, espionage, coalition, and censure. There are also rules for a 2-player version of the game featuring France versus Austria. Pre-orders are already available for this new entrant into the world of dip-adjacent games, so jump on this bandwagon now using the link provided in the show notes. This announcement is no subterfuge, although that is another card available for play in Diplomacy: The Golden Blade. Each month here on Deadline, we like to highlight the latest and greatest video, audio, or visual content from those whom we call our DBN media partners. First up, those stalwart broadcasters from Brisbane, Gavin Atkinson and Ken Gordon. They've released a new recording of their interview with 2025 World Dipcon Tournament Director Adam Silverman, in which he described his experiences both before and during this event. Adam also talks about club play, tournaments in general, and playing styles that he's seen over the years. This episode 140 of their Diplomacy Games podcast is perfect for anyone thinking of hosting a tournament, as well as anyone who just wants to hear from one of our hobby's best ambassadors and organizers, Adam Silverman. And also, the fine folks at the Diplo-Strats YouTube channel recently released a video in which co-hosts Ezio and Captain Meme answer subscriber questions, get this, while playing Minecraft, believe it or not. Categories of questions answered include those about classic diplomacy, variant diplomacy designs, imperial diplomacy, and concerning Diplo-Strats themselves. There's also, of course, a bonus speed round of question answering during the last 10 minutes or so of the recording of them playing Minecraft. It's totally nuts and totally required viewing. So use the link provided to check out this interesting offering from our friends at Diplo-Strats. Here on Deadline, we'd like to keep you, the viewers, informed about how our game of diplomacy is being used in academic circles for teaching, research, or other applications. A recent working paper from East Carolina University scholar Thomas Robbins attempts to synthesize for the non-technical reader recent utilization of diplomacy and other games to develop and improve models and agents in the field of artificial intelligence. Robbins is particularly trying to translate the outcomes of such study for use for those in the business world. After an introductory section describing the state of the art in games-enabled AI research, in which he focuses in part on Meta's Cicero agent for playing diplomacy, he then describes the games used by AI researchers and describes the characteristics which makes each game useful for this purpose. In his concluding section, Robin describes how the results of this research can be applied to business topics such as supply chain design, business operations, pricing, vehicle routing, healthcare, and general optimization theory. You can read the piece using the link below. In variant news, the popular metagame Imperial Diplomacy is having a spectacular face-to-face expedition of the game to take place as part of the diplomacy event at the Carnage Gaming Tournament in Vermont the last weekend of October. The schedule for the game has been recently announced. It starts Saturday, October 25th at 8 a.m. and ending with various included breaks no later than 11 p.m. that night. And then they'll present awards shortly thereafter. Live coverage of the game will be broadcast on the Imperial Diplomacy YouTube channel. So check out that using the link provided in the show notes. While there, you can peruse the other archived videos featuring previous plays of the Imperial variant, using both regular and Blitz-style negotiation periods. You may be watching this episode of Deadline too late to watch the coverage live, of course, but never fear, we'll have a full report on how that game went in our November episode. Now, we offer our latest in our series of segments called The Winner's Circle, in which we interview a recent tournament or league winner to find out how did they do it and how does it feel to come out on top. This month, it's two-time UK champ Dan Lester and just how he keeps on getting away with this. Dan Lester, welcome back to Deadline. I've kept you away from the show as long as I possibly could.
Yep, I know. And I had to go out and win myself a tournament so I could get back on.
It's actually true. I didn't think you really deserved to be on otherwise. But before we talk about that recent win in Warrington, tell us a little bit about when you got into the game of diplomacy and how. People are usually interested in knowing that.
Thanks, David. It's great to be back, actually. Great show. Love it. Privilege and an honor to be here. If you had told me 30 years ago, when I first started playing diplomacy, that I'd be on a show like this, doing something like this, I'd have been absolutely made up, because I used to play board games at school, Axis and Allies, Shogun, Risk, obviously all the usual stuff, but dice chuckers mostly. And someone had a copy of Diplomacy, and there were 5 of us who used to play. Good for Axis and Allies, not so good for Diplomacy. And we read the rules and we looked at it, but we could never quite get it to table. We didn't have anyone to show us the ropes, you see. And I think you need that to get started in diplomacy. I think you need someone who's passionate to really show you how to do it. You can't really make it up as you go along.
Right.
And then university, fresh as fair. Fantastic story this is. The man, his name was Steve Massey, wonderful bloke, fantastic guy, ran the Oxford University Diplomacy Society. And their stall was not with all the other games and hobbies and crafts in the hall way over there. It was in the politics section of the Freshers' Fair. And you had all the political stalls one after another: Conservative Party, Labour Party, Green Party, Liberal Democrats, philosophy, political science, whatever. And then this Oxford University Diplomacy Society stall with the board on it. And I recognized it and I went straight over and I went, I know what that is. And, that stall could have been lost easily in the kind of mists, but no, it was right there front and center. Steve talked me into coming along and playing the game. And that's how it started. And there was a great set of people at Oxford at that time who were enthusiastic about the game and hadn't only played it a few times, when they were like, there's a convention, you can come, literally, there's 100 people there, 120 people there playing diplomacy. And that was 1995. And the rest, I went along to that. And this thriving con scene, I was hooked. As a teenager. That's it. There's no way back.
Was that ManorCon that you went to or something else?
Actually, it was the first one I went to was called MasterCon, which was, that was the third major diplomacy tournament, which was getting like 80, 100 people at the time every year. Yeah, it was a heck of a scene at that time.
Yeah, the UK scene back in the 80s and 90s, really, but certainly the 90s was just amazing, for sure.
Yeah, very addictive. I remember getting wiped out. Every single game, wiped out, smashed. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. I loved it.
I would also love to see you wiped out every game. That would also be brilliant and smashing and whatever. But I don't think I'm going to see that. When did you start going to tournaments outside the UK? I know you haven't, been to every tournament outside the UK, but when did you start doing that?
Yeah, so when I had some money, after I was a student, I got working, and I won a couple of tournaments in the UK in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, some of the lads were going overseas, and they said you should come, and it was Holland. It was the first one I went to. I think maybe Utrecht, the EDC. And I've met quite a few European players because they were happy enough coming over to Manacon and whatnot, and that was a whole different experience. A whole new way of playing diplomacy in Europe. Shorter games, tighter games, really intense. And the recreational scene was fantastic at that time as well. Like everyone was, very, very welcoming and friendly and positive. And then the game started, and you were full of knives every single minute of the day, full of knives. And then afterwards, no nonsense. And that was where I, really first started to really realize how different countries play the game, different nationalities play this game.
Isn't that just the fact? And the venues are different, and the scoring systems are different, and the formats are different, and everything's different, and yet it's the same game.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It is incredible. Yeah, the diversity of that is incredible. Well, we've talked about this a little bit, but you've played this game now all over the world. What is the difference between playing it in Britain, for example, or frankly playing the British Championship, which you just got finished doing, versus some other kind of tournament in some other place? What are the differences that you could highlight for our audience? Yeah,
so from a format perspective, I think, we're accustomed to, continental European play, which is short and sharp. It's a 2 or 3 hours and it's done. And, every turn you could get stabbed to pieces or not. It's very intense. And then you've got what you might call your American style at the other end of the spectrum. Sometimes those games don't have any time limit at all. And I remember the first time I went to an American tournament, the shock that people were coming up to me in the first round of the game, first turn of the game, first year, and saying, so I think maybe the game end alliance here will be EGR. And I'm a bit like, what? Because I just played in France or in Holland, and I couldn't hold an alliance together for 2 seasons.
Right, yes.
9 years. Because the Dutch, they play like balance of power. Right. Pretty much every Dutch player that I've met, they love that balance of power game. They concentrate on making sure no one gets ahead, and they expect everyone else to do the same. And you get these nip and tuck games, which is why see Diplo. If you get 7 and everyone else gets 6, you get like 1 billion points.
Right.
And because you beat the balance of power, right, dynamic. And then you've got the United States, where if you haven't, when I went there the first time, people were literally coming up to me and saying, if you haven't soloed, you've messed it up. Every draw is a failure. That stuff.
That used to be the thinking, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And that's still the aspiration, right? It's solo or close to so. British, I think every time I play the British game, it's that thing in the middle. You've got that kind of 1909, 1911 type feel. It's the and it ends up having that sort of feel as well, that you get past the start, that you do want to get something going, but then you have to just hold on long enough to keep that solo out. And yeah, I think it's the best of both worlds. I love playing British games in Britain. And yeah, we're going to talk about this in a second, but yeah, our aspiration at the moment, some of us, is to try and reconstruct something of the glory days.
Well, you're on the road. You're on the road to that. You've got a lot more infrastructure, a lot more organizers, a lot more interest than you did 2 years ago in the UK.
Look, we've got so many people who are willing organizers, and that, and a lot of the older generation of organizers are still around to advise and help and guide. So actually that infrastructure is fantastic, and you've got to shout out people like Conrad Woodring, and obviously a kind of nepo baby of diplomacy, and nothing wrong with that. And a fantastic guy, and the amount of discretionary effort that he puts in to try and make the UK hobby great again is sensational. Bradley, there was a guy called Marvin Freed before, and then the lads up in Chesterfield and all over, trying to kind of kickstart games and get tournaments are back up and running again. It's brilliant. They're rowing together, and notwithstanding Conrad's amazing performance in Warrington, they're not doing it so that they can win tournaments themselves.
That's right.
Right. They're doing it for the love of the game. Great. And so many guys came kind of roaring out of the online hobby, and that's a real thing, and I love that, because what was great about the 80s and 90s in the UK is that all of these people were coming and playing, and they were out of the postal hobby.
Right.
And they were delighted to meet each other in real life and have a beer or a lemonade or whatever, and enjoy that companionship and getting to know people that you've been writing letters to. And I think the same is true now, right? You're getting people from online and they're coming together in person, and they're like, wow, you're shorter than I thought, Daniel. Yeah. So.
I mean, you kind of are, but let's not get into that. Let's not get into that issue. I mean, it is exciting. It's very exciting when you do know somebody online for a long time, or back in the days postal, and then you meet them face to face. I mean, it's fun. It is fun.
Yeah.
So there's no getting around that. Is there any difference in your view, or from a player point of view, in playing for a championship, like a national championship tournament, versus just sort of a regional tournament?
Yeah, I think so.
How does it feel different?
You want to play to, there's a ruthlessness in it. And, funnily enough, is really interesting because there was a period of time there where I was busy with it, various stuff, young kids and all the rest of it, didn't play as much as I did, but I always made the effort to go to the World Championships. And I was only playing tournaments where everyone was trying really hard to win. And they were thinking about what the scoring system was. And they were like, I got to try and win. I've got to really, really, really win. I'm going to kill you. And like, I'm really intense, and, the whole thing. And there are people at your national championships will be on that spectrum. Some of them will be really, really trying to win, and maybe playing differently to how they might normally play. Might play 10 games that year, 12 games that year in one way or another, and then suddenly you come to a championship, and suddenly they're like, okay, no, this time I'm going to bring my A game. So yeah, I think it is different and it feels different, and I'm really pleased that we have multiple tournaments here and side games and stuff going on, so that newcomers can come along, and that's not all there is. And that you can play in the London Diplomacy Club in a pickup game and stuff like that. It's just a different scene. Yeah, and I think that one of the weaknesses in the hobby in the past is just that we've accelerated too quickly to these big marquee events, and are you going to get a ribbon, and who gets the crown, and all the rest of it. And I think I have fun when I went down to London a lot last year, and I had so much fun. And you try, I get to try new things and mess around, and it's not that you're not trying to win. Don't get me wrong. Of course, you're still playing the game, but you might stab when you wouldn't otherwise.
Well, I was going to say, notwithstanding all of this talk, let's talk about you winning stuff. All right, let's. I know it's important to play when you're not trying to win, but whatever. Dan Lester wins things. First of all, let me ask you this question. We're going to get to the national championship in a second, but have you felt any different since you won the World Dipcon back in 2022? When you go to a tournament, do you feel differently now than you did, or different now than you did before?
So this for me, this is different to everybody else, in my opinion, or most of the people, because in Columbus, in the World Championships in Columbus, which was whatever it was, 2009.
I think that's right. I think it happened. Yeah.
I walked out of the third round of a 4-round tournament with 2 solos and a 3-way draw, with 1 round to go. And there were a couple of other solos, but that was it. No other results. And there was one board hadn't finished yet, right? But there was a couple of boards were still going on, but they looked pretty locked. And I went out and I went for a walk, and and I'm like, I've done it. I'm world champion. I've done it. I'm going to be world champion. Fantastic. I'm going to win. Yes. And I had a beer and I thought, how do I feel? Do I feel different? Do I feel amazing? Do I feel super incredible? I thought, no, I just feel exactly the same. I'm really happy that I've won, but, I just feel exactly the same. And I felt good about it because I'd messed it up in Vancouver a couple of years previously, where I got cocky and dug more a couple of legs off. And then when I went back to the tournament, actually one of those boards had turned into a solo, which was Andrew Goff. And then he soloed the last board as well. So he had 3 solos, and I only had 2 solos, so I wasn't champion. I didn't get to be world champion, but I'd already had the feeling. And then I had the monkey on my back, as well as having. So it was. So for me, I had a monkey on my back for 14, whatever it was, 13 years, to be like, I've got to get this thing over the line, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, narrowly missed it again at Dixie with not enough solos and all the rest of it, right?
2014, yeah.
2014, yeah. So, yeah, for me, this was as much as anything about, people coming and patting me on the shoulder and saying, I think you're the best player who's never won, and you want to say, thank you so much. can I show you this monkey? Because he's huge, like he's got big claws, really heavy, and you just have him. That's how
Well, that monkey is now off of your back and onto Adam Siegel's back, because he in some people's minds is the best player who's never won World Dipcon, and he's sure come close.
I mean, there's a list, but
there is a list. That's true. There's more than one person.
There's a list, and I think this is a great, this is a great pub conversation. But one thing I will say is that probably the person who approximates my experience the closest is Adam.
True.
Second.
Yeah.
And he, funnily enough, at Columbus, he was the first guy to solo. He had the first solo on the board, round one.
Isn't it quaint now to think about a tournament where there were multiple solos and all that? I mean,
solos flying around like crazy.
That is not a thing that we see as much now.
I mean, I tell you why, and this is something to talk about actually, and in relation to Warrington, in relation to the way Warrington was run by Bradley, which I'd love to shout that out a little bit. I think you need a certain death march endurance quality to a tournament that's going to cough up a bunch of solos. It needs to be fast, central clock deadlines, probably unlimited, right? Absolutely no mercy. Start early, 2 games a day. You're likely to play 4 games in 2 days, 5 games or 6 games in 3 days, right? And just go, just bang. And none of this top board nonsense either. If you want to get a lot of solos, forget the top board. Forget it. You're
not going to get it with the top board format. Yeah.
This is whoever gets the most points wins, and solos are worth way more points than everything else. Like that format, that's how you get solos, right?
It's true, but I'm not sure we're going to see much of that in the near future. But let's do transition to talk about Bradley Grace. For those that didn't get a chance to go to the UK Championship, tell us, what did Bradley have in store for you all?
I really hope that Bradley runs more tournaments so I don't have to play against him. No, that's not the bit I'm supposed to say. The bit I'm supposed to say is because he runs a fun time. It is a fun time. It is loads of fun. It's well run. He doesn't sweat the little stuff, right? We all know that he doesn't have, Deep Blue, the supercomputer, doing the board draws, but at the same time, it's not just roll the dice. You'll be kept apart as much as possible from people in, smaller tournaments. And, he puts his heart and soul into making sure that people are having a good time. And they feel like it's fair. They feel like, that they're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
And that they get an opportunity to play a good quality game diplomacy. And ultimately, if you're trying to make tournament success, those are the ingredients. And he does a fantastic job. Last year, when we went, it was a very small tournament, really. Just, a couple of boards every day, 6 boards over the weekend. And, it was a little band of brothers and sisters, and we had a fun time. And the question was this one, which was double the size, was this going to be as much fun? Or was it going to turn into one of those? Because I said it's the national championship, right? Knives out, right? Yes, it was. Yes, it was as much fun. It was great.
What did you think your chances were of repeating after you won the 2024 event? You going into the 2025 event back about a month ago. What were you thinking your chances were?
Yeah, so I've changed my views on stuff. So the uptick in my fortunes, lately, has come with a realization that I play best when I'm having a good time. When I actually go in to enjoy the games, when I realize how much I love diplomacy, and I just go in and have a good time, and don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. The results are going to be what they are. You can get destroyed. You can get at the top of the board, whatever. But I play better, more relaxed, more natural, more myself when I'm enjoying myself. So actually, genuinely, I thought my chances were probably slim to none, which really, because,
it's hard to repeat. It is hard to win the same tournament 2 years in a row. You're a target, and it's just hard to make that lightning strike twice.
Well, I mean, the most important factor in winning any tournament is good fortune, good health. Like if you're not well, then you're not going to win.
Keep yourself hydrated, eat,
Yeah, exactly. And try and stay kind of, keep on an even keel mentally, because if you kind of lose it a bit, too well. But
how did you win this tournament specifically? I mean, was there a particular factor that you can point to and say, here's what turned it around for me, or here's what capped it off for me? Or
the most important factor is that I made the top board, David, which doesn't happen a great deal. I am so much better in race tournaments than I am in top board tournaments. I can't tell you the number of times I've come 8th in the top board tournament. In Adam Silverman and Siobhan's World Championships in San Francisco, where they had like a 3 top board, I would have good money on coming 22nd in that tournament. And as it was, I didn't make the cut there. So, you know, I have the devil of a job getting on top boards. So once I did, I felt like it was like a great, huge bonus and a shot to nothing.
You were halfway home.
And then they left me Russia on the top board, which was nice because I was picking 6th. And, you know, you expect to choose Austria or Turkey, really, don't you? But, you know, Russia was there, so thanks very much.
And you were happy to get Russia in that game, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 2 countries I don't like, Turkey and France. So
let me just make a note of that when I'm running another tournament with you. I should put you where again? The first one was Turkey, and what was the second one?
France.
Okay.
France.
All right.
On the top board, this is mine.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, look, the standout. I don't mind telling you this. Conrad was the standout, in my opinion, was the standout player at the tournament. He had the most points going into the final. I was on 2 boards with him previously, where he absolutely bossed it. He was just, you know, he played fantastically well the whole weekend, and in one. In one of my games in the qualifying, I was France, and I was in Liverpool in Liverpool and London in 2003, and I can officially tell you that I was moving too slowly to keep up with Conrad. So in Russia, so yeah, that's how it was. But I think, you know, by rights he was probably the rightful winner, and I just, you know, got lucky. That's it.
He is not, because he didn't win. You won. You're the rightful winner. Yes. The only thing that matters is who gets the trophy at the end. So also ran Conrad Uruguay can say wherever he wants to. Well, you've already mentioned Conrad. Were there any other players in this year's competition you'd like to talk about a little bit? You know, I enjoyed playing with this person, or gosh, this person really surprised me, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, David Wigglesworth, he's player's choice. He's a great time. He's a fun guy. It's always a pleasure to play in a tournament with him. He executed the best stab my wife has ever seen when he managed to pull off a 4-center stab with the assistance of a certain Christopher Martin at the WDC in the UK in 2017. So I'll always have a soft spot for him, because Sinead came over to me afterwards. My wife came over to me afterwards and said, "I really understand why you love this game now. I've just seen the most incredible thing happen." So that was cool. Maaike Blom. So we've been at a bunch of tournaments together and never played a game. And we played 2 games this weekend. So that was great, in my opinion. I'm not sure she enjoyed the top board as much as I did. But
she might have. She looks like she's enjoying the game every time she plays.
Yeah, she's incredible. Great person, great player. Like I could go on. Like the list is, the list is really long. There's not a single player there that I looked at and thought, I don't want to be drawn on board with you. No, none of them, because I mean, even obviously, like, you know, really, really great players who are going to kick your butt, like Toby. Like, yeah, great. I'm on board with Toby. Fantastic, right? Toby's great experience on his diplomacy board.
Well, that's what we're looking for, is a great experience with great people and fun people. Yeah. And that's what we get at diplomacy tournaments.
Yeah. Great experience in the pub afterwards as well, if you're not careful.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, there may be some experienced players out there who are watching this that have not yet won a national or a world championship or anything like that. What would be your best advice for how, you know, they can breach that, you know, that barrier that they haven't yet breached? What's the best way to do that?
Well, it's belief. It's belief. There's 1,000 ways to win a tournament, and you've got to find the one that suits you best. And I could give advice, and people give you advice, but you know, once you've been playing for a while, you know what suits you best, how to feel. when to give yourself a pep talk, when not to, when to take the plunge, when not to, whether to write all your orders down at the beginning and be really fastidious about it, or play fast and loose. There's no hard and fast way. You just have to believe in yourself and that you can. I think, newer players, young and old, and players that have been around for a while that haven't got over the hump, they have a sense of their own limitations.
Yes.
Which are just in their minds. Like, I've seen guys play brilliantly until they get to 8 or 9 and then lose their minds. Oh, 8 or 9, oh no, it's going to happen now. We just keep doing the same thing. Just keep doing it. Don't sweat it. Oh, but I'm up against all these great players. I've lost 1,000,000 times before. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's just people like you. You've done pretty well to get to here, so just keep going. Like, that's it. Just keep going.
There are all kinds of people that don't win because they don't really try to, and they don't think they can. I mean, I think you're totally right.
I will give this piece of advice, which is a fantastic piece of advice, which is, funny enough, which I learned in Vancouver, which I mentioned earlier, which is, if you're winning, just keep winning. Don't stop winning. If you're winning a game, if you're winning a tournament, if you're ahead, if you're kind of going really fast and you get to 8 or 9, the number of people would be like, oh, I don't want to scare the table, a bit scary now. I'll just, I'll stop. I'll support myself. Don't mind me. I'm joking. Just no, win, go, win. You can't stop. They've noticed you. You're there. It's happening. It's too late. They've noticed you, and they're probably frightened of you. I know you're frightened of them. It's like but you're big now. The bear. Just get it done. Finish. Win.
So your advice is, when you get big, go bigger.
Yeah. When you get big, win. Just win. Just do it.
Well, that's not bad advice, honestly. I like it, and I think there are plenty of people out there who need to hear that. I mean, people that I may have said that to before myself. It's like, why are you complacent about coming in 13th? You can do better than that. I think a great example would be Jason Massbaum, who played this game for years and years and years, and frankly didn't get good results. He went to a lot of tournaments, didn't get good results. At some point, he really did figure out how to turn that around, and now he's a very competitive player at the highest levels. It can happen to people who have been playing a long time or a short time. Michael Blum's only been playing for a couple of years, but she thinks she can win, and she does. She just won Hechtstechen a few days ago in Germany. So, well, let me say this. For those who are watching this interview that want to see you in action again, when are we going to do that? I'm going to get you to make some commitments here. When are we going to see you next playing diplomacy in a face-to-face event? For example, are you going to the European Diplomacy Championship in a few weeks in Holland? Might be a little bit of a tough sell.
Yes.
You are. Great. So
yes.
EDC in a few weeks.
I'm not signed up. I am going.
Okay.
Question is whether I bring Lester Jr. with me.
Oh, right. I meant to ask you about Lester Jr., who had some success at a recent event himself, as I recall.
Yes. It's a dynasty, David. It's happening.
Well, it's a dynasty, but I understand what you're trying to say. I'm just trying to say, but yeah, it's good. No, that's it's awesome to get your kids involved. That's outstanding. Frankly, Conrad, I mean, I've known him since he was a teenager. His dad got him into it.
Right.
So these things happen. All right. So EDC, maybe a couple of Lesters, but at least one Lester.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be like a European event of old, right? And
say that again. I was talking on top of you, so say that.
Sorry, David. This is going to be like a European event of old, right? I'm convinced it's going to be an amazing time. I'm doing Shelter's work for him, but the way that they're approaching it, it's friendly, it's going to be fun, it's going to be fast, there's going to be a ton of people there, it's going to kind of hit that critical mass. And I think American tournaments have managed to sustain that kind of size and but in Europe, we're come and gone at this in the UK and in continental Europe, and some of this great to have a fantastic number of people here. It really is. I can't thank them enough, actually. The organisers for for bringing the start of a promise of a new golden age, and this is a big deal. Really excited for it.
I'm excited for you, for the people in Europe. I think it is spectacular because it looks like the numbers are really going to be, like you said, a European convention of old, and something that we haven't seen in Europe in a while, and that is spectacular. You're right.
And then the World Championships,
Athens.
Everybody's got to go. Everybody watching has got to go. You've got to go.
You got to go if you can. May 2026. You got to go if you can.
Town. Yeah, like there's no bring the family. Greece is an incredible country. You have to go there once in a lifetime if you possibly can. You've got all the ancient stuff. You've got all the beautiful beaches. You've got the fantastic food. You're friendly people, and there happens to be a diplomacy tournament going on at the same time. Like, how could you not go? You've got to go. Got to go. Warrington is also a nice town, by the way. Like, it's a lovely town near Manchester, but I think Spiros has got the better venue. So
yeah, Athens may be. Actually, I think it's a town next to Athens, right on the beach. I think is where this is going to actually be, which is spectacular. All right, Dan. Any other thoughts you want to express to our audience about tournaments, about the UK scene, about the European scene, anything?
So if you're out there and you're in the UK, I mean, this is my pitch. Come along, do some face-to-face stuff. Reach out in the comments, DM David, and we will hook you up with a game near you. It's a friendly group. It's not all tournaments and throat slitting. If you just want to jump in and you don't fancy the virtual scene, you want to kind of get around a board, or even if you're in the virtual scene and you want to get around the board, please do jump in and look. I've often maintained this. This is how I see my role in competitive diplomacy. After all those times coming second in World Championships and whatnot, third and stuff, if you can beat me, and you can, be beaten. If you can beat me, then you can be champion. Just think about that.
That is a great challenge to all those out there to go and find their fun. I mean, finding their fun in a pickup game is great. Finding their fun in a club game is great. Finding their fun at World Dipcon would be even greater. So go there and meet Dad Lester in May, and frankly, if you can, go in for second weekend in November of this year and meet him at the European Diplomacy Championship in the Netherlands. So.
And join the rest of the Europeans in beating the snot out of me.
Oh boy,
that's definitely going to happen.
I would pay actual money, but I don't think I'm going to need to. All right, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. You are a true treasure of this hobby, to be honest, and you were one of the best players anyway. But certainly after these recent tournament wins, I think everybody has to recognize the fact that you are one of these people that lots of other players would like to be. And so I appreciate your willingness to talk about, some of your hints and some of your, advice for people. I think that can be taken to heart. And again, thanks for being on the show.
Well, bless you, David. And let me say in closing, on behalf of not just myself, but all of our viewers and the diplomacy community as a whole, when I talk about treasures of the hobby, no one has done more to get this hobby out there. No one has given more discretionary effort. No one has given more gravitas and quality and humor than yourself. So the pleasure to be on this show with you is definitely mine.
All right. The check, QUE, will be in the mail. I appreciate that very much, Dan, and I'll see you around.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
And now for our feature presentation. Let's go to special correspondent Hal Schild, who caught up with a couple of tournament organizers about an often controversial subject of hobby inquiry: scoring systems.
Hey, David, thank you very much. I am here with Eber and Adam, and the topic of this discussion is scoring systems. So, Adam, the game basically is as written in the rules, is you need the most centers to win the game. Why the hell do we need any kind of scoring system? Why can't we just go, hey, I got 18 centers, you don't, I win, end of game?
So, most of us here have played a few games before, and I know in my experience, and I think this is probably universal, most games just don't end in somebody getting 18 centers, right? I think we can all agree that that's the objective of the game, and if you get that, you've won, and you deserve all the accolades and whatnot. But the problem is, like 90%, maybe 95, 97, 98% of games just don't end in solos, either because they get stalemated or people just get tired of playing or whatever, right? And so if you're thinking about a game in independence, who cares? Like, you're just playing at a house game, it's over. Who cares who won? It doesn't matter. We're not scoring it. But if you're trying to run a diplomacy league or a diplomacy tournament, you need some way to say, how are we going to rank different results that are not solos? Something has got to be better than something else. And that's really the crux of the need for scoring systems if you want to have other types of competitive games.
Eber, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that there's because solos are so rare, you kind of have to have another way of looking at what results are better than others. And obviously, in a huge number of games, you can have uh, a scoring system that's based entirely on solos and just aggregate it out like that. But when we have tournaments where you only play 3, 4, maybe 5 games in a weekend, that's just not a big enough sample size. And often tournaments end without any solos at all. And so you have to have some kind of scoring system.
So the name of the game, unless I'm mistaken and correct me, is diplomacy.
That's correct.
So why are the scoring systems lacking in any recognition of how well you conducted diplomacy during the game? It's so focused on dot counting. And I'll throw that to either of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, Hal. I think there's an argument to be made, and it may not be agreeable to everybody, but that if the goal of the game is to get to 18 centers and win, the closer you get to 18 centers, or the living in the game and not getting eliminated, you still have a chance of getting to 18 centers. If you have no units left, you're not, no matter how good your diplomacy has been, if you have no units on the board, you can't solo. So there's some argument that says, well, the closer you get to a solo, whether that's by having better position or by having more supply centers or some esoteric concept, should be rewarded, and that's the way you get there is by your having better diplomacy, right? Because you've gotten closer to reaching the objective of the game, right? And so rather than saying there's some subjective, like, you diplomed better than Eber did, we can say, okay, you ended the game on 15 centers and had a shot to get some more. Eber ended on 3 centers and, like, yeah, he was doing something maybe useful, maybe not, but you probably did better than him, rather than me having to say, like, okay, I had good conversations with both of them. I would say Hal gets a 70% and Eber gets a 30%, right? We have it's a more quantitative ways to kind of
It
evaluate.
is, but there's I'll say two other variables here. One, certain countries have statistically finished better. If you happen to show up at a game and you're assigned Italy, for example, well, you've got a way tougher mountain to climb than if you get assigned France or Russia, perhaps. And then the other factor is you're playing many times, especially the tournament, 6 other people of varying degrees. There is no qualification. You could be sitting at a table with a world champion, and you could be sitting at someone who's maybe okay at the game, like myself, for argument's sake, or David Hood, and you could then wind up benefiting because you're able to manipulate that person easier than perhaps a world champion or a well skilled player. So you wind up with more dots because you got a better country to begin with, and you, by luck of the draw, had a weaker player as your ally. So how does a dot-based scoring system compensate for either of those? And I'll let either of you answer that.
Well, Hal, diplomacy is, simulating something in real life that doesn't have fairness either. So if you're thinking about the name of the game is diplomacy, diplomacy in real life isn't fair either. And when you have, in real life, we have countries with very different power abilities to exert their power over other countries. And in the game of diplomacy, likewise, we have different countries with varying degrees of success in the game. You can mitigate it. You can add extra points to countries that don't do as well on aggregate in a scoring system if you want. But I think it's just judging based on the end state of a game. I think you can get a pretty good approximation of how well everyone did. All the other factors sort of ignored, because if you sit down at a table and you, like you said, you draw Italy and David Hood is Austria and some other world champion is Turkey, and they just smash you right from the front, you still have the responsibility to play up to that competition and try to work your way into it and not get eliminated right away. And so we still need some objective standard for how we measure how well someone played in a game, and I think that the number of dots they had at the end is one of the best ways to do that.
To digress just for a second, one of the brilliant things I think Alan Kalhelmer did in designing the game was not to give any particular country's units any more or less strength, so to speak. It's not like the British Navy gets 1.5 points versus the French Navy or something like that. So I think making it a level playing field, I thought, was a brilliant move on his part, just to ignore the different country parts. So Adam, what do you think about the fact that country you draw and who you're playing adjacent to influences the outcome, and how that should be incorporated into a scoring system?
Well, people like to say there's no luck in diplomacy, but there is luck in diplomacy, right? And you just highlighted that, right? But everyone is playing with the same luck factor, right? Like everyone, assuming you're in a system where draws are either random or stratified by ranking or something along those lines, like everyone's in sort of a relatively level playing field in terms of likelihood of drawing a particular country or likelihood of playing next to a particular person. But ultimately that is going to be a so-called luck factor related to the game. And I have personally experienced having bad games because I've gotten a draw that was just untenable, or I've had good games because I drew the right country with the right neighbors at the right time. So there's no question that plays in. I think the challenge is, when you're trying to think about a scoring system, is, to Eber's point, like you're looking for something that's going to be more objective or quantitative to some result in the game. I think if you started to try to figure out a way to intermingle these types of factors, it's just going to explode, like the number of possibilities or the way you do it. But maybe somebody can come up with a method that integrates that, and I think, sure, why not?
So
Give it a try.
currently, my understanding is there aren't any systems in the various tournaments that do factor in country draw or opponents. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that's right. It's not commonly used, and part of it is, in a tournament, you're going to play 3 or 4 games usually, and you generally don't draw the same country more than once, right? So the other thing to remember, Hal, is like some people are going to draw Italy and be like, "Dear God, I'm never going to get more than 4 centers." And some people are going to be draw Italy and be like,
Right.
"Cha-ching!
Right,
This is
right.
exactly what I wanted," right? So, to say that there's like a definitive better, worse kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, we all can say, yeah, France is really hard to take out, blah, 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 right? But the reality is, like, if you look across games, like World Dipcon, we had 54 games. Like, France was the worst country and eliminated the most, if I recall. So, I mean, you just don't know what actually plays out in practice.
I think for me at least, I feel the opponent, your neighbors, I'll call them, your neighboring countries come more into play as to your potential outcome than the country you draw. Because to your point, I've been in Italy and done fine, and I've been in France and done terrible. And it turns out there's a weak England, and other players, Russia, Germany, exploit the weak England. And next thing you know, the game's tipped because England didn't know what they were doing. So now, why don't you? I'll start with you, Aber. What's your favorite current scoring system? Like, if you were running the world here, you're now head diplomat. What scoring system are you putting in for your tournament?
Well, I did write my own scoring system, and I call it duct tape. and it's basically just points for centers, and then you get a small bonus for topping and another small bonus for surviving the game. Very, very simple. I like scoring systems that you can count in your head. I utterly hate any scoring system that requires some sort of online calculator and nebulous, uh, you know, formulas and all that, because I feel it just gives an advantage to people who have the time to look at a calculator on their phone or have the time to imagine the possibilities in their head, as opposed to a simple scoring system you can literally count on your fingers. Just levels the playing field a bit on that.
And
Um,
how have you actually deployed your scoring system in a real tournament?
yeah, it's been deployed in several different venues. One was the Regatta tournament in 2023. Yeah, that's right. In Denver. That it went pretty well. I think it had mixed reviews. It had some effects that I didn't anticipate, but it's also been deployed in the Nexus Press League on Discord, and is still used there to, I think, pretty successfully. I think it does a pretty good job of approximating who's played the best in a game, given that it uses prioritizes centers, which I agree with Adam is one of the most important things you can get is get a lot of centers in a game.
But no input for how well someone may have conducted diplomacy.
No, I don't. Again, I think that
I mean, it's just
the number
called
of dots you have
diplomacy,
at the
so who
end. Yeah,
cares what the name of the
yeah. Who
game
cares?
is?
Yeah, who cares, Hal? You got me. Who
Okay.
cares? I don't care.
Now, and Adam, how about you? What's your if we make you king for the day? Um, uh, what system do you put in charge?
I mean, my perspective is that there's a lot of different types of systems. Personally, I'll play under any of them. I'll run almost any of them if push comes to shove, because it's really just, I don't. It changes certain motivations in the game, but I mean, ultimately, like if you're playing to get 18, you're playing to get 18. Now, that all being said, I think that different systems do often have unintended consequences on how somebody looks at the game, right? And I think this is something that people who are like, "Oh, I've got this great idea for a scoring system. This is what we're going to do." I think they don't really think about what are the unintended consequences of that, right? And so, when I have made scoring systems because I've been running tournaments for over 20 years. When I first started running the whipping tournament in 2004, there were a couple of different types of a couple of different types of scoring systems in play, and I would say that's still the case. I think there's four fundamental like ways to prioritize or to award points in a system. You can have draw based or survival based. You can have centers. You can have board topping, having the most centers, and you can have ranking, which is where you just basically say most centers, second most, third most, and on down, right? And those are the systems that I think everything is sort of variations of that. When I first came up with the whipping system in 2004, draw systems were very, very popular at the time. A lot of tournaments were playing with them. They've fallen out of fashion since then. And the center system, there were also center systems, and there were lead based systems. And I think ranking systems kind of came in a little bit later. But my philosophy was let's combine and use a little bit of each of those. That way, there's a little bit of something for everyone to dislike about it.
And from my perspective, once I started back in the hobby again 4 or 5 years ago, and I started experiencing some of these tournaments, and each had different rules, it kind of threw me for a loop. Like, why isn't there a standard?
Yeah.
Like you play chess, there's a standard way to score pieces. Like if somebody's tournament in Brooklyn, a knight is worth this points and a rook it's all the same all across the board. Why do you think the hobby hasn't coalesced around the system?
Well, Cal, I don't think we can agree on one. And if we did, then we'd have one system, but we can't. So that for now, every tournament has a different system. Everyone has their favorite, and they can go to that tournament and enjoy it. And if like I was at Dipcon last weekend, and I played under the open tribute scoring system, which is one of my least favorite. Um, and I still played under it. I still had a great time. I enjoyed playing the game of diplomacy. At the end, my points were not tallied the way I would have liked, but it's not up to me. That was up to the TDs of the tournament to decide. And they made their decision based on what they thought was the best or what they thought was going to be the most fun for everyone involved. So we have half a dozen strong tournaments in this country, and we go around doing different scoring systems with almost everyone, and everyone has a great time. So I think it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So.
I'll throw it out another way of thinking about it. How let's imagine there's a diplomacy tournament and there's three players at that tournament. The first player in their three games gets 10 centers, 10 centers, and 10 centers. The second player gets 12 centers, 2 centers, and 15 centers. The third player gets a solo, eliminated, and eliminated. Can you rank those players for me in terms of how they've performed over that tournament? I don't want you to, it's rhetorical. I don't want you to actually answer that. But I bet if you asked 15 diplomacy players, you'd get a lot of different answers and there probably wouldn't be a consensus on it, right?
No, I appreciate the fact that any competitive game, from NFL football to Monopoly, if there was no definitive rules in place about how to pick a winner, would come up with multiple ways to pick a winner. I have no doubt about it. Okay. The question I propose or asking here is, to me, that's insanity. In that, if you want to be able to go to your point, Adam, if someone did what you just said in Dipcon, and then went to whipping, and then went to Boston Massacre, so on and so forth, you'd be able to, over their 10, 12, 14, 15 games, be able to rank them and go, oh, it's like tennis. Like, oh, okay, you went to these 10 different tournaments. Here's what you placed. We now can put you. So if, hey, we want to be able to get a board of like skill level players, we now have some way to assess, this table should have everybody who's, A+ play, whatever. So would it not be better for the hobby, from a global standpoint, to settle on a system as imperfect as any system is going to be, to move forward?
In the past, this hasn't been around for a number of years. There was something called the Grand Prix or Grand Prix, but they used to say Grand Prix for some reason, which you can probably imagine. Which was kind of what you're saying. It was sort of a way of ranking people across many tournaments. We actually revisited that on the West Coast. That we have three tournaments that we do something called the Buzz Cup, which is we rank people how they performed in the three or four West Coast tournaments. And we have a kind of uniform system where we take, like, just based on their rankings in all of those tournaments. And the Grand Prix was sort of the same thing. I think Europe still does a Grand Prix. North America hasn't done it in a while. I know there's been some whispers that might be restarted, but that is one thing that people envisioned and saying, basically, like, okay, each tournament can have its own system, but we have a way of sort of ranking people how they do across a whole range of tournaments. And I love that. I would love to see the Grand Prix come back, actually. And I know Europe does it still, and I'm not sure if Australia has something like that as well.
Okay, I would definitely be interested in having that come back. So now, Adam, what's your go-to scoring system?
Well, I just ran World Dipcon in San Francisco this past year. We ran a system called Hate, which is named after the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury. But we also figured, since that's what most people feel about scoring systems, it was a good name for it. It was along the lines of what I was describing earlier. It's a kind of a hybrid system. It's largely center-based, but there's also an element of rank and board topping as part of it.
What's the worst system you've come across? Like, if
The
there was a
worst.
system, if there's a tournament, do you look at the scoring systems when you decide which tournaments to go to?
No,
How about you,
I do.
Ever? Is that something
I
that factors into your
No,
participation?
no, I pretty much look at what's feasible for me, in terms of travel. But if I could choose, if all else being equal, I would choose based on the scoring system. But no, I don't. There's just so
I
many things that are more important.
there
So
are no systems that are in play that I've seen recently in play that are so offensive to me that I would skip a tournament over a scoring system. And even the ones that I think are kind of offensive, I wouldn't skip if I wanted to go and hang out and play diplomacy. I mean, there was a system that was common in use by the pit kissers in DC, kind of your crowd, Hal, back in the early 2000s. That was largely it was mainly a draw based system. There might have been some size center based component, but it was largely center based. But it was largely draw based. But any group of powers that controlled 29 centers could basically decide the draw. And so, like, if you were at like holding a stalemate line with like 2 centers, you could be voted out of the draw. It was like the biggest perversion of the system ever, and led to all kinds of stupid shenanigans. Because at that point, you have no reason to even hold the line, right? Because what do you care? You're going to vote you out anyway. So it created all kinds of stupid, perverse results, and that system has fallen out of fashion, as have some others that were tried, but. Somebody wants to try something new. I'm all in favor of that. See if it works, and if it doesn't, you move on. And if it's interesting or needs some modifications and tweaks, you do that and see how it goes. Like I don't think this is like a critical part of the diplomacy hobby, to be perfectly honest with you. Like it's a necessary evil, but it's not really something that like is what keeps the hobby going.
Fair, but I will say there's certainly a lot of Discord chatter over various systems.
Because people like to talk, man. People like to argue.
Now, last questions here. So for the World Championship, and I should say I'm kind of embarrassed I don't know this. Does the World Championship have the same scoring system every year, or does the host get to pick? Wasn't that just absurd? Like imagine the Super Bowl being played every year, and the home city got to pick how you won.
You know how when we start making millions of dollars playing this game, maybe we can have a unique one scoring system for everyone. But while we're paying money to play this game, I think we'll play whatever scoring systems we want and not worry about having one uniform one for everybody. But
okay. Any last comments on scoring systems, pros, cons? Any shade you want to throw at anybody?
It's not my favorite topic to discuss. As I've said, I think it's pretty tangential to the importance of the hobby. I think the social aspects and the making friends, being friends, hanging out with people, going out for drinks during and after the game, playing this and just playing your heart out and trying to do the best you can. I think that's a lot more important. But it's a necessary evil. So here we are, mouthing off about it.
Heber, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Adam. I think that there's any scoring system that really impedes people's fun should be done away with, and any scoring system that doesn't really have an impact on people's fun or makes it even more should be encouraged and used more often. So that's basically my my biggest rule for deciding if they're, like, what did you say, offensive or not? Yeah. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for taking the time out to talk about scoring systems today. Adam, I know David Hood suggested I get a hold of you. Any idea why he did?
Because he's a jerk, man. Why would he do that? Why would he put me through this?
Who knows? Well, thank you both. I hope to see you on the board soon. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to all of you watching at home. We hope you have enjoyed this broadcast of Deadline. If you have news, ideas for features, or feedback of any kind, please feel free to send an email to info@diplobn.com, or you can drop me a line directly using davidhood@dixicon.com. To review all of our broadcast offerings, visit our website, www.diplobn.com. This is David Hood, signing off. I wish you brightness and bliss and, of course, Belgium.